crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, talking about trucking companies, trucking accidents tonight. A lot of ground to cover. We have a great guest joining us. Really looking forward to this conversation. Before we get into it, a couple of reminders. First of all, if you'd like to join our conversation, and we'd love for you to do so, ways you can call, text, email. That's going to be on the bottom of your screen all throughout the program tonight, so please take advantage of that. Also, something that Hollis Wright makes available each and every Sunday night is the attorneys from the firm are standing by live to speak with you. That's a free, off-air, and confidential conversation. A great opportunity for you tonight, so please take advantage of that if you choose to do so or would like to do so. Leading our conversation from Hollis Wright, Carter Clay. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good to see you, David. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, truck accident litigation. We've covered a few shows on this before. Yeah, it's something that we cover quite frequently at our law firm. It's a big part of our legal practice at Hollis Wright. It seems like never before the traffic out on the roadways these days. I can't remember the last time I went from Birmingham to the beach or Birmingham to Mobile on I-65 where I did not get stopped in at least one major traffic jam. So it seems like a real issue out there. And of course, the more you're stopping and starting on the interstates and highways in Alabama, the increase potential there is for catastrophic accidents. And boy, when you get involved or see an accident involving an 18-wheeler or a big rig, the consequences can be devastating in terms of injuries and deaths. And so obviously this is an area of our practice at our law firm, but we want to get people in the Birmingham or Alabama area that also practice in this area. We want to have them on the show to give us unique perspectives, kind of talk a little bit about their area of practice as well and the truck accidents that they're handling. And we've got a great guest here this evening. We've got D.W. Scott, who's an outstanding young lawyer in this area. So D.W., welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background and your law firm and kind of how you got involved in handling truck accident cases.
Well, yeah, so I'm a Tuscaloosa, Alabama native. I graduated from the University of Alabama and went to law school out in Little Rock, Arkansas, and returned about, I guess it's been about 11, 12 years now. I worked for, or did a sort of an apprenticeship for an attorney who happened to do personal injury law. And from there, I like the idea of representing people, sort of evening and balancing the scales for the little guy, so to speak. And, I just fell in love with it and been practicing ever since.
Yeah. Well, we know just from your traditional kind of garden variety car wreck cases in Alabama, we know what's referred to as the rules of the road. And those are sort of the statutory laws of how an individual should conduct themselves when driving the passenger type cars. But when we talk about big rig accidents or tractor trailers or commercial vehicles, those are being driven for commercial purposes by and large, or to transport people if we're getting in to buses and things of that nature. So you've got much bigger vehicles that are involved, and there are some different areas of the laws and different regulations that apply to those types of vehicles. Is that right?
That is correct. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration provides the regulations and the rules of the road for, at least from the federal standpoint. Also with the state of Alabama, there's the Alabama Public Service Commission, which provides additional regulations in addition to the rules of the road that you and I have to follow. The truckers are responsible for following those rules as well, but those two entities are responsible for outlining what the truck drivers have to follow with respect to those regulations and rules.
Yeah, not to deviate too much, but so the United States Constitution has in there that the federal government has the right to regulate and control interstate commerce. So
absolutely.
Interstate meaning outside the boundaries of one particular state. Federal law kind of controls that area, and from that comes the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and the Act. And I've got the book back in my office, and it's rather thick.
Yeah.
But so talk a little bit about some of the high points of the regulations that apply to truck drivers that may not necessarily apply to you and I just driving our passenger cars.
Well, sure. Things like drug testing, random drug testing, even with respect to post-accident drug testing, the amount of hours that you can drive. Certainly you and I shouldn't drive too many hours on the road, but certainly there are no real rules that say we can't drive a certain amount of hours. Truck drivers are responsible, and trucking companies are required to keep logs of the drivers, where they've gone, how many hours they've even rested. Not just the hours they've driven, but how many hours have they rested in between time. And those, like you said, it can get rather complicated.
Yeah.
It's a lot of regulations, but those are a few of the highlights with respect to what's regulated.
Yeah,
something that I'm curious about, because I see this and it seems random. Is there a method to what seems to be madness? Sometimes I see where truckers have to pull off the road and get weighed, right? You see those stations. But then there are some interstates I never see that happening. Like it happens.
Right.
I mean, is there a rhyme or reason as to when, why, how often truckers have to get the trucks weighed?
Well, I think all of what you just said influences or plays a part in that. I don't see weigh stations playing as big a role as I did 10 or 15 years ago. Oftentimes I feel like a lot of those weigh stations are even closed. But to your point, which is that there are times in which they have to get weighed, but you don't have to go and get weighed every time you pass a weigh station. So that may be why you're seeing a lot of tractor trailers will just drive on by.
Keep on going?
Yeah, even if they're open. But we just don't hear a lot about that. In fact, a lot of the litigation that we have, and DW can comment on this as well, most of the litigation, if not 99% of the litigation that we're involved in, really doesn't have anything to do with somebody being, quote, overweight or carrying more than they should be carrying. I mean, they may not have product in there. It may be an empty trailer, or they may have product in there. But usually there are other more pertinent issues in the case than the rig being overloaded. I just personally don't see a lot of that type of litigation. Right. It's usually distracted driving, speeding, going through a red light or something like that. Just some type of maneuvering issue, failing to slow down, that type of thing is really what I see. You want to comment on that, DW?
No, that's absolutely right. I agree. Most of the things we see from day to day is, rear-ending, not paying attention, drivers oftentimes being in unfamiliar territory, things like that. The weight of the vehicle itself is so much more than your average sedan or SUV that we drive. So the load that they carry doesn't make too much of a difference with respect to that.
Now, one thing that we do see quite frequently is that these regulations, these federal regulations, I mean, they literally are bumper to bumper type regulations. DW's been talking in the context of the driver, the commercial truck driver himself, and what they have to go through to become qualified to be a driver. But there are maintenance and mechanical aspects to these regulations that require upkeep on the mechanical aspects of these rigs. And if you don't maintain a certain part on the rig, say brake lines and things like that, and the brakes go out, we oftentimes will dive into those maintenance records to see whether or not they were fulfilling their responsibility to maintain those certain components on trucks. And that is a part of what we do.
Yeah, we've got to step aside. Our first break of the evening right here as we do so. A reminder, wherever you are on social media, Hollis Wright is there also. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just search the term Hollis Wright and you'll find them there. A great resource for you, especially with social media, and a great way to get some good information that you can trust. Stay tuned. More of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, Call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with The Attorneys.
Hello and welcome back into The Attorneys. Before we get back to our conversation, a reminder, the attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by live to speak with you. That free off-air conversation, take advantage of that. As long as we're on the air tonight, they are available, so don't waste any time. Carter?
Yeah, DW, we've been talking kind of about the federal regulations that control these types of commercial trucks. And one of the federal regulations that's out there deals with the amount of insurance coverage that these trucks have to maintain so that if they cause an automobile accident, if the driver does something wrong and injures or kills somebody, heaven forbid, and those individuals make a claim against the truck driver, there will at least be some level of liability insurance coverage there. Talk a little bit about the insurance side of it.
Okay, so similar to what we have to carry on the road, the state of Alabama sets forth a limit of everybody in Alabama has to carry $25,000 minimum liability insurance. Well, with these big rigs, these large commercial trucks, they can cause a lot of damage, a lot more damage typically than a lot of our sedans and SUVs. So the minimum is $750,000. Oftentimes in my line of work, I'll see $1 million minimum in coverage. There's also, depending on the situation, they can be as high as $5 million. There are also umbrella policies that a lot of companies will tack on to that minimum requirement as well. So just to answer your question, the minimum $750,000, but oftentimes we'll be able to see $1 million.
Yeah, so there's obviously a significant difference between the $25,000 in coverage that you and I and everybody else driving their cars on the road would have to have, and the minimum of $750,000. And there are a lot of reasons behind that, but like you mentioned, not the least of which is the devastating consequences that can be caused by somebody getting hit by an 18-wheeler.
Absolutely. When you just talk about the sheer weight of these big trucks, I mean, I drive a pretty heavy SUV, but I mean, it's around 5,000 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
When you're talking about big rigs being tens of thousands of pounds, upwards of 80,000 pounds, just with respect to the sheer force that can cause the amount of damage, and unfortunately even deaths. So fortunately, they are required to carry a hefty amount of insurance to cover the amount of damage that could happen in an accident.
With these truck drivers that are out there, if they're working for a company, or most of them are driving and hauling freight for a company, are those companies responsible for their negligence in driving the vehicle, or do you just go after the driver?
Well, so yes, they are typically responsible under the concept or the principle of respondeat superior, meaning that if you are working in the scope of your employment for a company, the company and the driver are jointly and severally liable. So typically what will happen in our practice is that I will sue both the negligent driver as well as the company as well. You see a lot of things in this practice. I just recently saw where the company actually did not have the coverage. So that's very rare. But fortunately, my client has the uninsured motorist, and that's another topic for another day. But yes, to answer your question, the companies are both responsible, the company and the driver.
Yeah, and one of the things we as lawyers have to figure out pretty early on is the truck driver working exclusively for a company, a singular company, or are they what we're kind of characterized as an owner-operator, where they have their own rig and they're dispatched and have sort of independent contractor type agreements with multiple different companies? Because in that situation, if they're an independent contractor and they're just doing singular jobs for various trucking companies and they're getting paid like a 1099 or just getting paid per trip, in that situation, it may be more challenging to hold the company responsible for the driver's misconduct. You may be left with just going after the driver, but ultimately, it may not influence the amount of insurance coverage that's available, because you still may be dealing with a $750,000 policy or a $1 million policy.
That is correct, and I actually have a case like that right now where I brought suit against an independent contractor, and luckily, because of the requirements for the insurance, that coverage is there, so it wouldn't be an issue in this case.
David, any questions? Or?
Yeah, what role, a question here, what role does alcohol and drug use play in tractor trailer accidents? How common is that nowadays?
Well, there was a recent study that studied fatal accidents caused by big rigs, and I think that study showed of the 67% or so, around a third involved drugs and alcohol. So, and this isn't to paint truck drivers in a bad light at all. What they do is important, but ultimately at the end of the day, there are individuals out there on the road driving these big trucks who are negligent from time to time. And unfortunately, sometimes it does involve, unfortunately, drugs and alcohol. So it is a serious issue.
Yeah, and we always like to put out kind of this disclaimer, because sometimes the show can come across the wrong way, is that this is not a show to bash truck drivers. The vast majority of truck drivers out there are doing it the right way. They're responsible. They're driving their trucks all the time in a reasonable manner. But these types of accidents, because of the devastating consequences, get magnified. And it's not a situation like you and I and DW may be in, is if we take our eyes off the road and maybe we tap another vehicle, it doesn't cause any injuries. But a tap of an 80,000-pound rig on a smaller vehicle can also have devastating consequences. So we like to, it's a big area of litigation that's out there, but we always want people to know that there are plenty of truck drivers out there that are doing it the right way. But there are some that are not doing it the right way, as DW alluded to in that statistic. And just like DW would do, our firm does as well. Is one of the things, if we get involved in the case early on, we want to know, was the truck driver, did he undergo a urinalysis afterwards? Did he undergo a blood test? If he was taken to the hospital, maybe he or she had some injuries as well. What was in their blood? So that is definitely a ripe area of exploration.
Absolutely.
Let's step aside.
Sure.
All right, our final break of the evening right here. A good time to do this. More of the attorneys coming right up. Stay with us, folks.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WBTM 30.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. A reminder, this is the final segment, so this is it. We've got about 7 minutes remaining in tonight's show. So if you want to get in touch with the attorneys from Hollis Wright who are standing by live right now to speak with you, you've got about 7 minutes to do so. Remember, that is a free off-air, and it's a confidential conversation, so it's a great opportunity for you. So give them a call. About 7 minutes remaining for you to make that call. Carter?
Yeah, I know it's self-serving, but I would advocate or argue that when people are involved in any form of automobile accident, that they should consult with an attorney as soon as they possibly can, after, of course, they handle their medical needs. But what is it about a commercial vehicle accident that I guess sort of raises the stakes, so to speak, and even makes it that much more important for somebody injured in an accident or a family member to contact a lawyer as soon as they can?
Well, we sort of touched on it when we opened up about the regulations. So the trucking company is going to have people on the scene right away, doing their investigation, talking to witnesses. One of the most important things is the black box data. And the black box data kind of records important information about the truck, you know, the speed, direction, things of that nature, which can tell you a lot about how the accident happened and really lead to liability in a lot of cases. Also, you like to get the truck off the road. I like to send a spoliation letter informing the trucking company not to discard anything until, you know, we've had a chance to inspect it. Those are just a few of the reasons. I'm sure you can touch on some other points as well why you want to get involved as quick as possible.
I mean, they're actually, I think, referred to as rapid response teams. And I'm not going to mention any names, but I have actually been with attorneys before who defend trucking companies and drivers in these types of situations that literally got a text or a call and said, hey, one of our trucks has just been involved in an accident. We need boots on the ground. And they will send out investigators, sometimes send out what we call accident reconstructionists, who are experts that can kind of reconstruct the accident. And they're out there, boots on the ground, gathering evidence and information right off the bat, trying to talk to the investigating police officer or the state trooper. So, David, if you don't have people that you enlist to do some of these same things early on, by the time you do get around to getting to an attorney, we're just going to be subjected to a lot of the evidence and information that they've already gathered. Okay, and obviously they're motivated to gather evidence in a way that sort of protects their drivers, and so you can be at a disadvantage early on by not getting out there.
Is that the most common mistake you all see from your clients, that they wait a little too long to get in touch with you before an accident? Or if not, what is the most common mistake?
I would say that probably is the most common mistake from my standpoint. Probably the second most common mistake that I see are circumstances where the person is hurt at the scene, but maybe they've got a family member or friend that's in the vehicle with them that was not hurt, where in this day and age you've got an iPhone where they don't take photographs at the scene. Like, there are certain things that lay people can even do at the scene: take photographs, gather information. If you see that there's a witness there, talk to the witness. I've had situations before where the individual said there was another witness, but they didn't get their name and telephone number, and that person did not appear on the accident report. So just little things like that. But you have a comment about that, I'm sure.
I certainly agree. Everything you just said with respect to not talking to certain witnesses. You know, sometimes in my intake, I'll interview the client, and when I'll ask, was a witness there? Well, yes, I talked to this lady, and she said this and that. Well, did you get her information? Well, no, I didn't get the information. So that's absolutely key. Taking photos and getting the other driver's information, as well as witnesses who may have witnessed the accident.
And obviously not talking to their insurance, I would think, is a big no-no.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
I mean, giving them advice, because if you're not represented, then you're subjected to being contacted by the driver, the truck driver's insurance company, and they'll call and want to get recorded statements. And they've got motivations behind doing what they're doing to try and protect and defend their truck driver. So you really got to be careful in that regard. And talking about getting to a lawyer early on, what is the statute of limitations on these? And I hesitate oftentimes to even tell people what the statute of limitations is, because their knee jerk is well, I got plenty of time then, right? But talk about that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. The short answer is 2 years from the date of incident, date of accident, date of injury, however you want to call it. However, sometimes these big trucks can be municipal vehicles as well. Mm-hmm. And that comes with a whole host of different problems where you have 2 years, but you have a matter of months in order to file a notice of claim with that municipality. And that can be a whole different topic as well. But you're right, you don't want to waste a lot of time thinking that you have a lot of time, because depending on the circumstances, you may not have that much time. And the worst thing, the thing you don't want to do is contact an attorney, a year later. At that point, we're just coming in and our hands are tied a little bit, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's better to have somebody on the front end that can help you navigate your way through this, kind of gather the information. If there's evidence out there of driving under the influence and things of that nature, you want to have a lawyer that's sending out letters and getting involved early on.
Yeah. All right, less than 2 minutes remaining, but just enough time. Final thought from you, and if you would, DW, you go first, please, sir.
Well, we kind of touched on it. I think the main thing is contact an attorney as soon as possible. You want to make sure that you get your medical treatment first and foremost, of course. I would advise not to decline medical attention on the scene. Just go ahead and get checked out. Oftentimes people don't know they're injured at the scene, but later they realize they're injured. Get in touch with an attorney as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I hope people have realized through the show tonight that these are a much different animal than just your garden variety car accident type cases. They have complexities to them. They oftentimes involve us hiring experts known as accident reconstructionists who can go out there and look at skid marks, can evaluate time, distance, and speed, and do calculations that can indicate where vehicles were at various times, that can show distracted driving. They can do the downloads of the black boxes that DW's mentioned. They oftentimes will get iPhones and figure out whether or not somebody was on their iPhone at the time of the incident. So there's just a lot to this, and hiring a lawyer early on to get them involved to evaluate and investigate these accidents really can prove invaluable for the client.
And due to the complexity of these cases, I just don't see how someone would hesitate. You're going to need help, and the trucking companies are going to have somebody. They're going to have a team. You need to have your own team.
That's absolutely right.
DW, nice to meet you. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoyable conversation, Carter.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. All right. So there you go. With that, we're going to wrap things up for tonight. We appreciate you being with us, and we'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.